Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassel. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown, where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness, where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I'm Willie Hassel, along with the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious, the one who has the in with the weather elf, but she doesn't admit it. Lynn Nickerson, good evening.
Good evening, Willie. How are things in your field?
My field? Well, I made a home run, but then I struck out the next 3 times, so I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah, you generally do strike out. Just kidding.
Good thing this isn't TV. Although it is video, so wait till YouTube comes out and you'll see that nasty look she just got.
Who gave who?
Who? I don't know. Who? What's going on? What's new in the world?
Gee, what can we talk about? Well,
I don't know.
We had sort of a little bit of a different show tonight.
A little different. Ooh. Okay.
Well, yeah. We like to talk about ghosts and so forth and just about anything paranormal. But Willie and I discussed it, and we decided that we would do a show on haunted castles, first in England and then Scotland and then perhaps Ireland. So we wanted to start a series of doing a show on these different hauntings. But we're focusing on something a little bit different this time. It was my idea. I wanted to focus on some of the more macabre events that happened.
I remember that it was your idea.
That was my idea. Because as I was reading some of these castle stories, what struck me was the various, the histories, the rampant display of cruelty and man's inhumanity to man. And, some of these victims, obviously they never find rest or forgiveness or for themselves or for others. So they wind up haunting the same locales, through the ages. So we chose some of these stories based on those that could be best substantiated through research, which, to my way of thinking, it lends a greater deal of insight to the reason that these ghosts are experiencing so much unrest. So our jumping off point for tonight is from the perspective that ghosts do exist and that otherworldly events do occur to sane people.
Ghosts do exist?
Well, that's the point, that's the perspective that we're taking tonight.
Oh, okay.
Not that we've got it proven, but we kind of believe that they exist, don't we, Willie?
Strange thing to be saying on this show, isn't it?
Well, then don't discredit what I just said.
I'm not.
Okay, so we'll endeavor to uncover why these people from the past acted the way they did, under what circumstances, and what the political temperament was at the time, to give us more insight as to what's going on with them. So it's my opinion that the most dramatic and pronounced actions from the past in the British Isles occurred in these political strongholds because castles bore witness to some of the bloodiest and cruelest transactions against one's fellow man. And over the centuries, contentious forces would vie for possession of these castles, halls, or these great houses. They became the setting for the bloody histories from battles for ownership to the execution of traitors and to the torture of prisoners. And many people would die from either injury, disease, treason, political murder, or even jealous rages. So with such violence and tragedy, it makes you wonder, how could these places not be haunted? Mm. So we want to focus on the ones that had more drastic histories and that can be verified.
Okay.
Oops.
And so, they got all the cool ones over there.
What was that?
They got all the cool ones over there, all the castles. We don't have any castles.
We do have a few, a handful, but they're not very old.
Yeah, we got...
And the replicas, really, they're reconstructions of...
Yeah, we got... what's the one in Gloucester there?
Forgot. Yeah, it'll come to us.
Yeah. Anyway, it's cool.
Yeah.
And it supposedly is haunted. So.
Yes, that's right, by the original owner. Lowell? Yeah, is that right? No.
I think it starts with an H.
H, yeah. I was just thinking Hubbard, but that's not it either. It'll come to one of the Howell.
Yeah, no.
Howell,
no. But I think you're close, though.
Sounds like...
sounds like Howell, but it's not. We'll get it before the show ends.
But there are a couple around. There's one in New Hampshire, too, remember, that we tried to get to see?
But the police wouldn't let us in.
The police wouldn't let us.
They wouldn't tell us where it was.
They wouldn't even give us an inkling, but we found it on our own.
That's right. We didn't need them.
So the first castle that I want to talk about is Leeds Castle in Kent. The site dates back to 857, and from there, stone structures were built on top of it. And it's been a castle site since 1119, and it was used by King Edward in the 13th century, while Henry VIII used it as a residence for his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, in the 16th century. And so now it's a popular tourist attraction, and it's been open to the public since the mid-1970s. So there have been a variety of reports of hauntings or strange events happening there. One is the appearance of a black dog, Hammond Castle. That's what it was. It started with an H. Yep. Sounds like Howell, doesn't it?
But not quite.
So back to Leeds Castle. There's been a black dog that has been sighted, and the dog is said to terrorize the castle grounds, and it's become associated with the death or other misfortune misfalling a member of the castle owner's family. That's just one of the tales. Another one is the origin of the ghostly dog is said to lie in the witchcraft dabbling of Henry VI's aunt, who was Eleanor of Gloucester. And in 1431, she was found guilty of practicing necromancy, witchcraft, heresy, and treason. I don't know if they had evidence, but they were quick to judge in those days.
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah. As a result, she was imprisoned at Leeds Castle for life. And there have been witnesses also who have reported seeing a ghostly woman gliding along the corridors of the castle, and they think that it may be the Duchess of Gloucester. And then there's another apparition of a woman in a long flowing dress brushing her hair, who has also been seen on the grounds and in the Queen's room. But the most interesting report, this is most interesting to me anyway, is a time slip story concerning this castle. And although it's not a classic sighting, this incident is considered a time slip, and it was reported from the castle when a woman by the name of Alice Pollock was touching objects in the Henry VIII's rooms in an attempt to experience events from another time. After a short period of receiving no impressions, she reported that the room suddenly changed, losing its modern, comfortable appearance and becoming cold and bare. The carpet had disappeared, and there were now logs burning in the fireplace. And then she saw a tall woman in a white dress while walking up and down the room, her face appearing to be in deep concentration. And not long after that, the room returned to its original state. Later research showed that the rooms had been the prison of Queen Joan of Navarre, Henry V's stepmother, after she had been accused of witchcraft by her husband. So I don't know what became of her, but I don't imagine it ended well for her. So that is the story of Leeds Castle in Kent. And if you're ready to launch, Willie?
Oh, you looking for me?
You might have a history that you want to tell us about.
I was doing technical stuff over here.
Oh.
You caught me off guard.
Well,
okay, I'm ready, though.
Okay, good.
I'm ready to go. Yep. This takes place in Houghton Castle, or Houghton. Not to be confused with Houghton Mansion in North Adams, Mass, because they're totally different places. And this is more of an accident, a mistake than anything. It's called Death by Neglect, and incidentally, this is from the book In Search of Britain's Haunted Castles.
Ooh.
Mark Alexander and Paul Abrahams.
Good.
So, Death by Neglect has left a ghostly aftermath at Houghton Hall, whose towers look across the North Tyne in Northumberland. The haunting goes back to the days when Sir John Widdrington was lord of the castle. At that time, the border was a lawless place, made worse by the fact that the Lord Dacre, what did we decide? Dacre. The Lord Dacre of Gilsland had been appointed Lord Warden of the Marches. Instead of pacifying the area, he was known to be in a league with the freebooting families who preyed on their neighbors. The oppressed local gentry asked Sir John to travel to York to inform Cardinal Wolsey of the unhappy situation. And just before Sir John began his journey, his retainers captured a reaver named Archie Armstrong.
A lever?
Starts with an R, reaver.
Okay.
But anyways, his name was Archie Armstrong.
Okay.
So he was summarily thrown into a dungeon, and Sir John, his head full of the importance of his mission, just rode off.
Oh, I remember reading about this. This is interesting.
It was only that he reached York that he found the key of the dungeon in his pocket and realized with a thrill of horror and plight of the prisoner, it was the only key in existence that could unlock the massive dungeon door. So what did he do? He immediately began the return journey, galloping so fast that when he reached Durham, one horse had died underneath him. When he finally arrived at the castle, his first words were to ask about the prisoner. The retainers answered that for the first 2 days there had been a lot of shouting and screaming from behind the oaken door. But after that, silence. So Sir John ran to the door, turned the key in the lock, and found Archie Armstrong sprawled on the floor dead from thirst, died of thirst. As a protest to his untimely end, the phantom of the outlaw returned to Houghton Castle, and his despairing cries rang again and again from the dungeon to torment the inhabitants and drive away the servants. A minister was called to exorcise the spirit, and the ceremony appeared to be successful. The Bible that had been used in the ritual was kept within the castle as a protection against the spirit's return. Years later, it was found that the leather binding on the book was crumbling, and it was dispatched to London for rebinding. Almost immediately, though, after the book had left, the dying cries of Archie Armstrong were once heard again in the castle. A messenger was sent urgently to London to bring the book back, after which peace was restored.
Yeah, that was incredible.
It was an accident. It wasn't,
Why did they throw him in the dungeon to begin with?
I don't know. They didn't like him. I think he parted his hair on the wrong side or something. I'm not sure.
But they were going to let him go, but he forgot all about it.
He just totally forgot. Whoops, I got the only key that can get him out. The only key that can save his life.
And it's such a crime. Well, that Lord Dacre wasn't the nicest person, because we've got a couple of other stories about him,
he
too,
comes
tonight.
up again, doesn't he?
He does, and he visited a whole lot of castles, too. Yeah, the guy got around.
Got around.
And that's such a sad story. But that wasn't, there wasn't such direct malintent, but certainly it died by misadventure. Very sad.
Yeah, that's why I say it was not an intentional thing. It was more of an accident, but nevertheless, it shouldn't have happened.
No. Well, I've got another story here. It's, by the way, all of my stories tonight are taken from Haunted Castles of England by J.G. Montgomery. He's got a wonderful group of stories in here. So this one is about Powderham Castle in Devon. And this focuses on the strange stuff that people did to each other. If they wanted to get rid of somebody, these castles were usually out, they're remotely located, and there weren't lots of people around, and they could get rid of bodies pretty easily. And oftentimes they'd just bury them in the floorboards or hide them in the walls, take down the stone walls and bury them in a hollow in the walls. So this sort of thing did happen at Powderham Castle. It's the ancestral home of the Earl and Countess of Devon, and it was built in 1379 by Sir Philip Courtenay, and it's one of the oldest family homes in England. And although it's called a castle, it is actually a fortified manor house. So around 200 years ago, during a renovation to the guard tower, one of the castle's oldest sections, it was discovered that an ancient wall was hollow, and upon breaking the wall down, workmen were horrified to discover a room that contained the bones of a woman and a baby. The remains were quickly reinterred in nearby Powderham Church, but it seems that this did little to quell the restless spirits, and according to several mediums, they were bricked up alive and left to die. That's just brutal. There's several stories in here like that. The woman's ghostly apparition is frequently seen holding her child as she moves around the castle in a state of abject despair. I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so, too.
And then the second report is a ghostly figure that roams the castle, and it's called the Grey Lady, and she's been witnessed on numerous occasions either walking slowly between the castle and Powderham Church, or else appearing in the library, where she leaves a cold chill in her spectral wake. She's believed to be Lady Frances, who married the Viscount Courtenay in 1741. And although a seemingly benign ghost, it is said that a visit from her spirit, is actually a bad omen and foreshadows the death of the head of the house. So, Powderham Castle, I don't think it's got a sterling reputation.
I don't think so. What is that? Powderham?
Powderham.
Powderham.
Powderham in Devon.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah. Another really sad place. They leave negative energy in their wake.
All right.
What's with burying a woman and a child in the wall? I mean, can't you secret them away, and why kill two people?
I don't know. I've never done it, so
Many bones they have been recovered, and it makes you wonder. I don't know. It's just the depths of cruelty and depravity to me, doing this to people.
Yeah.
And some of them, they were probably lucky. I don't think starving is lucky, but some of them were brutally butchered too. But
I don't know. Back in those days, they were brutal.
They were brutal. In the preface of this book, preface of the introduction, one or the other, J.G. Montgomery was talking about, well, we're brutal now. I mean, there are lots of, look at all the killings in Chicago, and look what we do in our wars. However, it seems like the brutality was done on such a personal basis. You were always right up front and close when you were murdering these people or butchering them or whatever. And a lot of that went on because it was hand-to-hand combat,
Now it's done by cowards up in a building somewhere shooting into a crowd,
Yeah, there are knifings too, but it just seemed it was always upfront and personal and right in your face. And that takes just sheer brutality and cruelty.
And a sick mind.
And a sick mind, yeah.
Hey, you want to go to Wales?
Let's do that.
All right. We're going to go to a place called St. Donat's Castle in Wales. And St. Donat's has the reputation for being one of the most haunted castles in Wales. I wonder if Steve knows where that is.
We'll have to ask him.
Yeah. The building goes back to the beginning of the 14th century and has been added to from time to time. Today, it accommodates Atlantic College, an international sixth form college, which founded in 1962 was the first of 12 United World Colleges. At the beginning of the last century, there was an alarming outbreak of paranormal activity. The most extraordinary aspect, big words, most extraordinary aspect of this manifestation was the spectral panther, which prowled silently along the castle corridors. As with much psychical phenomena, there is no known explanation as to why such an exotic manifestation should haunt a Welsh castle. Other occurrences that alarmed the owners and staff of St. Donat's included a mysterious light which glowed in one of the bedrooms, having the semblance of a large staring eye, a witch like wraith frequently glimpsed in the armory, and an invisible piano player who produced chords from a piano even when the lid was locked in place. Such was the distress of this activity caused by the then owner that he advertised the castle for sale. But before he received any offers, he heard of a faith healer who also specialized in exorcism, and he wrote to him asking for help. When the faith healer arrived at the castle, he listened to a recital of the hauntings, and then, having asked the owner to sit in the hall with the main door wide open, retired to the room where the strange eye-like light had shone. Here he prayed and concentrated on dispelling the specters. Suddenly, a great gust of wind swirled about him, blew down the staircase and through the hall, practically toppling the owner, and out through the open doorway. Just some of these strange things that happen in St. Donat's Castle in Wales. So, that was kind of a short one. I don't know if I took you off guard with that.
Excuse me, no, not at all. Just let me have a swig of water here.
I was kind of getting a little worried there when I started that, and you got up and left. I said, "Oh,
I'm out of here.
This is a short one. What am I going to do if she doesn't come back?"
Well.
So we have about 3 minutes to the bottom of the hour. Do you have something that'll fit in there, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I think I've got another short one. How about of a place called Woodruff Castle?
Oh, okay.
And this is located in Cambridgeshire. And this is a very tragic story. Very tragic, because this guy was given luck several times, and finally his luck ran out. But again, it's sort of, it tells of the brutality of the age. So Woodcroft Castle is a moated medieval castle in the parish of Eton in Cambridgeshire. And Woodcroft Castle was erected at the end of the 13th century. So the castle was held by the Royalists under the command of Michael Hudson during the English Civil War, and was successfully besieged and taken by parliamentary forces in 1648. Hudson was captured and sent to London. However, he escaped and returned to Woodcroft to defend it. Then later, with parliamentary forces swarming over the castle, Hudson was thrown from one of the parapets, but he managed to cling to a stone gargoyle. To remove his grip, an enemy soldier severed his fingers, and he fell into the moat before swimming away. He managed to reach the shore of the moat, but he was again captured and this time killed by a musket blow to the head before his tongue was cut out. It's said that Hudson's ghost haunts Woodcroft Castle even today. Sometimes you can hear him shouting or screaming or begging for mercy. It's said that he's often seen around the time of his death, reenacting his fall into the moat. I mean, this guy went through hell. He escaped. He returned.
He just couldn't get a break, could he?
No. Cut his fingers off, fell into the moat.
Ouch.
Then he was recaptured, blown away, and his tongue was cut out. Wow. I think I'd haunt if that happened to me too.
Yeah, but he couldn't tell the tale about it, though, could he?
Really sad.
It is. And it's just about the bottom of the hour.
Yeah. So we could take a quick break here.
Hey, well, why don't we do that?
Okay, and we'll turn and we'll talk about some more ghosts and castles.
Okay, Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. We'll be right back. Supernatural Magazine, one of the UK's top paranormal magazines, provides support to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information is available at supernaturalmagazine.com. And you are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Hey you, don't help them to bury the light. Don't give in without a fight. Hey you, out there on your own, sitting naked by the phone, would you touch me? Hey you.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on WSCA 106.1 FM. And you know, castles are kind of like, it may be kind of a long shot, but they're sort of gateways, aren't they?
Yeah.
Gateways into
into the paranormal
kind of stuff.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just thinking, I love exploring time slips. And my second thing is I like the ghost idea, but I really am fascinated with past lives.
I know you are. Past lives and time slips are two of your big things.
And in my book, Gateway to the Paranormal, I explore a past life as a monk at Glastonbury. And I've got some really good evidence to support that. So that kind of falls right in with what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah. You've recently done more research on that, right, to come up with this evidence? Or was that the other one?
Yeah, I haven't done any more research on this. I think I'm going to have to go someplace where I can get some more information, like visiting Glastonbury.
Yeah, you're going to have to go to the Abbey.
I think I'm going to have to go straight to the mountain.
Straight to the mountain.
The other one is I believe that I was a young woman captured in a castle at Bothwell Castle in Scotland. So I'm doing a lot of research on that to try and line up the facts that I have. But if anybody's interested in reading my story about my past life at Glastonbury, Gateway to the Paranormal is available on Amazon, and even some of the local Portsmouth bookstores are carrying it, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, that would be cool, huh?
Yeah, Deadwick's and Tugboat Alley and River Run Bookstore. They all have a copy of that. I guess I'm just an old-fashioned girl at heart.
I guess you must be. I don't know. What was the old-fashioned part about that? You mean the bookstores, you mean? Or the time? Never mind.
I get the focuses of my interest.
Okay.
Kind of old-fashioned, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
I love old.
Okay. You didn't mention Greystoke, did you?
Greystoke? No, I didn't.
Okay.
Why?
Well, because that's
Oh, is that your next castle?
That's where I'm going next, is
please.
Greystoke Castle.
Tell us about Greystoke.
You want me to tell you about that?
Please do.
Okay. Well, behind its Elizabethan facades looms the original square palais tower of Greystoke Castle, which had been built by William Lord Greystoke in 1353. It is to this old tower that the Greystoke ghost has returned from time to time, a ghost whose departure from life was more mysterious than its subsequent hauntings. When Charles Howard, Duke of Norfolk, was master of Greystoke, he invited a friend to stay at the castle to enjoy a hunt with him. After a day in the field and a wonderful supper, where they all stuffed themselves, the guest retired to his room in the old Palais Tower, where he was ready for a nice long night's sleep, I'm sure. But then, come morning, he didn't show up for breakfast. The Duke wasn't too excited about this. He figured, he's probably tired from the exertion of the hunt or the celebration after, and he probably just slept longer. But when he did not appear by midday, his host sent a servant to rouse him. The man reported that the guest was not in the room, and furthermore, he could not have left the castle because his clothes were still hanging over the back of the chair. Unless he was out running around naked or something.
Or maybe he was looking for a latrine.
Maybe. But anyways, the Duke, he immediately went to the tower and found everything as he had been told. The bed had been slept in. The clothes were hanging on the servant as the servant had described. But his friend, there was no sign. The castle staff were ordered to search the whole building and the grounds around it. But no clue was found as to the riddle of the vanishing guest who was never heard from again. The room remained unattended from then on, apart from the phantom of the missing gentleman, which unfortunately has thrown no light on the mystery of his fate. But another ghost connected with this same room, manifesting itself by knocking on the wall as though it was desperately trying to break through. It is said that to be echo of an errant monk who was walled up in an underground passage which led from the tower to a chapel in the castle grounds.
Now, why would they have done that to a monk?
Why would they do that to anybody?
Well, usually there's either greed or some political motivation. So why a monk?
I don't know. They don't harm anybody. They're nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. Why? I don't know.
Did they ever find this guy that disappeared?
No, he vanished. He was never to be seen again.
I wonder if he got walled up. But what would have been the reason for killing him?
And would they have had time to do it I suppose overnight. Somebody could have.
Well, yeah, maybe they could have gagged him or knocked him out and then walled him up. But what was the motive?
If somebody had done that, though, I would think that Lord Greystoke certainly would have known about it. Don't you think?
He probably was in on it, but why?
That was my point, yeah. He probably in on it. But why? I don't know.
So the only remnant of this is bangings on the wall?
That was a different ghost, though. I mean, as far as the friend who disappeared, he just plain disappeared. Left his clothes on the chair, and that was it.
Really?
The banging on the wall was another ghost. The ghost of the monk was the one that was banging on the wall.
I wonder if they ever checked the latrine.
Yeah,
maybe he slipped and fell in.
We should give him a call. Tell him to go out and look in the latrine.
Well, it is a thought,
He might be out there. Yeah, it's a good thought, actually.
No, but that is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. When something just appears out of nowhere, it's an apport, right?
Right, yeah.
What's the opposite when it just vanishes?
A disappearance?
Ooh. Good word. That's a pretty paranormal word, isn't it?
Oh, we're cooking tonight.
Yeah, we are. Okay. You want to bail me out here?
Okay, so maybe we'll segue into a little bit of political intrigue. This concerns Edward II of England and and the first quarter of the 14th century, so it was the early 1300s. So Edward was the issue. Edward II was the issue of Edward I, and King Edward I died July 7, 1307, from dysentery. So his young son, at 23 years old, took his accession to the throne in 1308, just a few months later in February. So the world his realm that he came into, they say that he was blessed with intelligence, bravery, and good looks, and inherited the throne of a secure and well-governed country. His father, Edward I, had been well-respected. However, Edward II exhibited a self-indulgence and lack of judgment in public and private life that made a bitter enemy of his formidable queen and of prominent barons, and this led him inexorably to the loss of the crown and a gruesome end in a prison cell. So the tales here that I'm about to tell you is about Edward II, his wife, Queen Isabella, her lover, Roger Mortimer, and then all of the escapades of Edward II. So I'm not saying that he was a bad ruler, but he certainly did have an awful lot of distractions. And he was in the habit of having personal friends that he wanted to grant titles and give land to.
Favoritism, just like...
Exactly.
Just like this country. Huh?
Yes, and to people that other barons and earls didn't feel that they had the right to. So he was creating this dissension within his court. And also, too, he gave away one of the titles to a friend of his that should have been given to his own son. So that caused a lot of problems between him and the queen. So this person that the titles and the land were given to, he wound up being murdered. So the barons, they weren't very happy with him. And then he formed some new friendships after this. The guy's name was Gaveston, and he's the one who lost his life. They saw to it that he was taken out of the picture. So he acquired some new friends. They happened to be Hugh le Dispenser, Hugh the Dispenser.
The dispenser.
Dispenser, I guess he was French. And he also had a son, Hugh Dispenser. Don't know if it was the second because he might have had a different middle name.
Is that dispenser, like he dispenses with people?
Yes, Dispenser. No, Dispenser was the last name. So anyway, apparently Edward II was probably really fond of the younger Hugh, and this started irritating Queen Isabella. So finally, she decided that she was going to do away with the younger Hugh. She did, and let me mention, in the meantime, she had been forming an alliance with Roger Mortimer, and he was the Earl of March. And he sided with the Queen Isabella, and they both did not like the way that Edward was ruling. So they wanted to get rid of him. So what they did do is they, once again, killed... What'd they do? They killed, not Roger. They killed the younger Hugh. And then they got a hold of Edward, and they threw him in a dungeon. That happened to be at Berkeley Castle, and I'll get into those details in a second.
Okay.
So there are two places that are severely haunted. One is Berkeley Castle, and the other is where Isabella and Roger Mortimer evidently reached their end. Now I'm going to go to Berkeley Castle here. Both Roger Mortimer and Isabella wanted to get rid of the king, and I don't think they wanted to kill him outright. What their intention was to starve him, and they threw him in the dungeon at Berkeley, but he wouldn't die. So what they did is they pulled him out, and they decided to torture him, really. They put him in a room. They laid him face down. They put a funnel in his posterior, and then they proceeded to fill the funnel with a hot rod, so that they wound up searing his innards, and it was a terrible death.
I imagine it was.
So that's
kind of like being branded from the inside.
It's terrible. I just want to get the story on Berkeley here.
Okay.
Because there's something specific that they talk about. Please talk amongst yourselves while I'm looking for this.
For those of you at home, she's trying to locate the other part of the story. And it's kind of like we're out here on the back nine. He's about to make the putt. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So Berkeley Castle is in Gloucestershire. So what happened? What is noted at Berkeley Castle now is that Edward's excruciating screams can be heard throughout the castle on the anniversary of his death, and the room in which the apparent grisly murder happened can be visited by the public today, as can be the adjacent deep dungeon in which he was held. So they threw him in the dungeon, and they thought that he would die either from starvation or from disease, because it was apparently putrid down there, and the guy wouldn't die.
He just wouldn't die, kind of like a roach, huh?
So they pulled him out, and they decided they'd make quick haste with him. So there's Nottingham Castle, which is also connected to this threesome. Nottingham Castle is located in Nottinghamshire. And
that's a good place for it.
Yeah. And there are several ghostly happenings that happen here. But probably the most, the most...
The most interesting one? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I guess so. It's haunted by several people, but there's, of course, Roger Mortimer, the Earl of March, and then Queen Isabella. And Sir Roger was imprisoned in the castle. This was after they tried to take over, and she put her son, Edward III, in power. And I don't know exactly what happened, but she had her comeuppance, and so did Roger. So Roger was imprisoned at Nottingham Castle and later taken to London, where he was hanged, drawn, and quartered.
Just hanging wouldn't be enough,
It's terrible,
huh?
I know. Drawn and quartered in November of 1330. So under the castle, carved into the sandstone outcrop on which the castle stands, is a cave known as Mortimer's Hole. And for some reason, his ghost makes a presence there. But his ghost is also heard pacing around his former cell as if he's unaware that he's been dead for centuries. And the second ghost, which is pretty prominent, of course, is Queen Isabella's spirit, and she's said to haunt the interior of the castle, screaming for her lost love, while an unknown phantom child also lurks within the walls. Now, there's a follow-up story to the third set of ghosts, all equally brutal. Isabella was the one who ordered the deaths of the two friends of Edward II. And
there's too many Edwards.
I know, there's one,
too many
two,
Henrys.
and three that I know of. Yeah. But if they have issues,
Issues. Okay.
So she wanted Edward II dead, her husband, then she wanted two of his friends dead. So they both died atrocious deaths. Not only Edward, but the second friend, they cut off his genitals. I mean, you talk about atrocities.
Yeah. That's worse than getting branded from the inside, I think.
Well, I think they're both about the same. Yeah. So who knows why her spirit is restless, but it's probably because she was such an evil woman in life. But the third haunting has to do with King John in 1212. This was before Edward II came to the throne. But King John took some hostages. They were 28 sons of Welsh nobility. And he held them hostage in the castle at Nottinghamshire.
28 sons of not all the same.
They were 28 sons of Welsh nobility, no, not all the same family.
Okay.
But he was, exacting revenge on somebody in particular. And apparently he took good care of them, and they were well treated, and they were allowed free rein within the castle walls. However, something changed, and then one day, King John had them all executed in cold blood, taken up to the ramparts, and they were all hanged. All 28 of these young kids. And it said that there's this one particular ghost who people hear his cries for mercy still ringing out through the castle. Well, why would a king hang children? 28 children, all sons. It's just, again, the cruelty has...
Cruelty.
There's no end to it.
I don't.
I guess he wanted to stay in power. He didn't want any opposition.
Yeah. But speaking of cruelty, though, I got one where somebody was trying to play a cruel trick, but it backfired.
Oh, what castle is this?
Powys, P-O-W-I-S.
Oh, okay.
Powys Castle.
Please tell us. I haven't heard this one. I don't think.
You want me to tell you then?
Yeah, please.
Can everybody else listen too?
Sure.
Okay, all right. It was over 2 centuries ago at Powys Castle was the scene of a cruel trick played out on a simple spinning woman who, thanks to the appearance of a mysterious ghost, had the last laugh. And the incident is one of the best recorded castle hauntings, known locally as the Red Castle because of the ruddy color of the sandstone walls. Powys Castle was enlarged from an earlier fortification by Baron de la Pole.
You should have asked me.
Well, had I realized this before the show, I would have. A supporter of Edward, who...
Which Edward, do you know?
Edward I.
Oh, okay.
Who conquered Wales. Okay. When the family died out in the middle of the 16th century, it was bought by Sir Edward Herbert. During the Civil War, it was captured by the parliamentarians, and after the Restoration, it was returned to the Herberts. In 1780, there was a lot of gossip. Gotta watch that gossip. About a woman who had seen the castle's ghost, which was supposed to have revealed a secret to her. A preacher named John Hempson, who was held in high esteem by the Wesleyan Methodists, was curious about the story and interviewed the woman, who vowed the story was true and that there were many witnesses who would vouch for it. She explained to Mr. Hempson, who made notes, that she was a spinster in both meanings of the word, meaning she was unmarried, and she was also made her living by spinning.
Oh, jeez.
So, a spinster. As farmers in the district grew their own flax, she went to their farmhouses where she spun it on the spot. On one occasion, when her usual customers had no work for her, she decided to try her luck at the castle. When she arrived at the gloomy fortress, she was told by the steward that the Earl of Powys and his family were away, and he could not say if a spinner was required. But then his wife piped up. She says, who seems to have, she had a cruel streak apparently in her nature. And so she found some sewing work for the woman, saying that she could stay in the castle and earn her keep until the Earl returned. But then what surprised the woman and delighted her at the same time was the luxurious room that she was allotted, and could hardly believe a person of humble as she should be allowed to sleep there. What she didn't know was that it was the castle's haunted room. And so the steward's wife, encouraged by the rest of the servants, had placed her there to see what would happen. They bade her good night, and the poor spinner may have wondered why they locked the door. She said, well, maybe that's just the way they do things in the castles. Make sure that the common folk don't steal anything. Before going to bed, she sat by the fire and read her Bible. And after a while, she looked up to see a man had silently entered the room wearing a gold lace suit and a hat. Although she was rather surprised, she was not afraid, thinking, well, maybe he's some superior servant who had come to make sure everything was in order. The figure walked across the corner window and stood still, giving the impression that he expected her to say something. But she was tongue-tied, and the mysterious visitor walked back to the doorway and passed through it. The bewildered woman suddenly realized that he had entered and left without the sound of a lock. The silence of his entry and leaving made her realize he must have been a phantom. Everything fell into place then. She was cruelly imprisoned in order to be haunted. All she could think of to do was pray, and she knelt beside her bed. Then she looked up to see the finely dressed apparition had returned, and again it seemed that he expected her to say something. She summoned up all her courage and asked, "Pray, sir, who are you?" "Take up the candle and follow me, and I shall tell you," was his reply. In telling her story to Mr. Hampson, she described walking along a seemingly endless corridor and then into a small room. She said, "As the room was small and I believed him to be a spirit, I stopped at the door. He turned and said, 'Walk in, I will not hurt you.' So I walked in. He said, 'Observe what I do.' He stooped and lifted one of the floorboards, and in the cavity beneath was a box with an iron handle. He said, 'Do you see that box?' 'Oh, yes, I do.' Then he stepped to one side of the room and showed me in a crevice in the wall where he said the key was they had would open the box. He said, 'This box and the key must be taken out and sent to the Earl in London. Will you see that that is done?' So the woman said, 'I will do my best to get it done.' He said, 'Do, and I will trouble the house no more.' Then he left. I stepped to the room door and set up a shout. The steward and his wife, with the other servants, came to me immediately. It seemed they had all been waiting to see the issue of the interview betwixt me and the apparition. I told them the story and showed them the box. The steward dared not meddle with it, but his wife had more courage and found the key. The spinner said that the chest was heavy, but she did not open it, and therefore could not see what was in it. The steward then dispatched the box to his master in London with a letter describing the curious way it had been found. By return came a letter ordering the steward to tell the spinner that if she wished, she could reside in the castle for the rest of her life, or if she wished to remain in her cottage, she would be well provided for. She accepted the latter offer, being grateful to the Earl and to the ghost. But neither she nor Mr. Hampson ever heard an explanation for the apparition or got any hint of what was contained in the chest.
So why'd you tell us that story and not give us an ending?
That was the ending.
Jeez.
Oh, wait a minute.
What?
The end.
Okay.
How's that? Now you got an ending to the story.
So truly, nobody knows what was in that box?
Oh, someone knows, but the spinner and Mr. Hampson, they never found out. But
we don't know either, do we?
No, we don't know either because they're not telling us. No. But the main thing is that by finding the box,
the ghost stopped haunting.
The ghost stopped haunting the house. So that's why the Earl was so happy and said, "Well, you can live in the castle, or we'll take very good care of you."
Oh,
got to read about ghosts.
That's a teaser. I want to know the story. I want to know all the story.
Well, you know what? You can complain too. Mark Alexander and Paul Abrahams.
Nah, I don't want to complain. That was pretty interesting. It's just a little frustrating
not
to know what was in the box.
Yeah, I know. We got about, I don't know how much time we got.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of run through
this. 2 or 3 minutes, I don't know.
Really quickly. Well, there's Lord Dacre that we've run over today. And he appears in several castles. What was a castle that you spoke about with Lord Dacre? Do you remember? Well, there were 3.
I think that was Houghton Castle.
Oh, I think it was.
I think.
Okay. And he is also associated with Dacre Castle in Cumbria, as well as, I think it's Naworth Castle in Cumbria as well. Since we only have like a minute left, I'm going to talk about Dacre Castle in Cumbria. And this is the sad tale. In the 15th century, Sir Guy Dacre fell in love with a girl named Eloise, the daughter of a French noblewoman. However, she snubbed his advances, so he enlisted the help of his Italian tutor to help him win her. Sadly, though, the tutor had an affair with Eloise while Sir Guy was away fighting in Scotland. When he returned, though, Eloise agreed to marry him, although he was still unaware of the affair between herself and the tutor. So Sir Guy once again had to leave to fight in Scotland, and he entrusted the castle's care to a loyal friend by the name of, I think it's Lyulf. It's Lyulph, Lyulf, who soon learned of the affair. And of course, he had to say something to Sir Guy when Sir Guy returned. And all this time, Eloise had decided to marry Sir Guy, but when he took off, they continued their affair, the Italian tutor. So, Sir Guy, when the lovers left the castle, once that Sir Guy found out about it, the lovers left the castle and moved to York, and Lyulf told Sir Guy about what he had learned. So Sir Guy set off after them. That is Sir Guy Dacre. And he brought Eloise back to his castle. He finally found her, and he locked her in a dungeon. In the dungeon, she found her Italian lover chained to the wall. That's because Lyulf had previously captured him. When she tried to kiss him, his head rolled from his shoulders. Lyulf had cut off his head and then set him in the dungeon. Eloise was cruelly kept captive in the cell beside the rotting corpse of her lover and eventually went mad, and then she died. And not surprisingly, her ghost is now said to haunt the castle. It's also said that the site of Dacre Castle was the meeting place of 3 kings in ancient times who met to arrange a peace treaty with the Vikings, but I don't think it ended well because their regretful ghosts make an appearance at the castle to this day. So that's the sad tale of Dacre Castle, and with that,
it's the end of the hour.
We shall say adieu.
And that is Spirit Radio, and yes, we are going to be taking the next 2 weeks off for the holidays. So Merry Christmas to everybody, Happy New Year. And
I second that.
And you second that, okay. And we will talk to everybody in 2019.
And have a great evening. Thank you for listening. Good night.
In this one of many